Good evening and welcome to the March 25th, 2019 Board of Selectmen's meeting. We have Mr. Bendel, Mr. McCoy, and Mr. Kyra present. Mr. Eaton had a personal matter, so he's absent, excused, and we have a vacancy. At 6 o'clock, we met in executive session for the purpose of discussing strategy with respect to litigation regarding the high school gymnasium in accordance with Mass General Laws, Chapter 30A, Section 21A3, as an open meeting would have detrimental effect on the negotiation position of the town. We also reviewed minutes of November 13th, 2018, November 26th, 2018, December 10th of 2018, January 14th of 2019, January 14th of 2019, March 11th of 2019, in accordance with the GL Chapter 30A, Section 22. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We have some treasury warrants, 37, 37A, 38, and 38A to approve. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Bendel,
Second.
seconded by Mr. McCoy. Any discussion on the treasury warrants? Hearing none, all in favor? Three unanimous. Okay, we're going to start off with our appointments. The first is with Scott C. Garant, Esquire, on behalf of Richard Lowe, representing DDK Baking LLC, doing business as Josie's Bakery, and it's for a victualler license for the property located at 2 Lowell Street, unit number 8.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, with me here this evening is Rick Lowe, the principal of DDK Baking LLC. And nearly 5 years ago, I was in front of the board seeking the same license for Tremezzo Ristorante. And I think it's safe to say that over the last nearly 5 years, it's become a wonderful part of the community. Rick has dedicated himself to making Tremezzo not only a business, but also a member of the community. Rick and Tremezzo supported numerous local organizations, nonprofit organizations, and youth sports organizations. These efforts were recently recognized when Rick was chosen as the 2019 recipient of the Carmen Cunningham Business Legacy Award from the Chamber of Commerce. I'd also like to note that it seems like every time there's a string or a chat on social media that's Wilmington based and people are asked what they'd like to see in town, bakery seems to get right near the top of the list. So it's enough from me. You want to hear about the lobster claws and the important stuff, so I'll defer to Rick at this point.
Hi, thank you for allowing us to come today.
So, what's on the
well-
menu, Rick?
Well, that's the $1 million question. So once again, thank you for letting us come today and with Josie's Bakery. We're going to be right around the corner from Tremezzo. Obviously, it's a couple doors down. It was previously the Edible Arrangements, and they moved, I think, or went out of business. I'm not sure, but going and look at it with Joe Langone to try to figure out who he may market it to. We were talking about bakeries, and it kind of dawned on me that I make all my stuff in-house, and I need a little more room, and it just kind of made sense to go over there. Plus, I have a young lady on staff who's a renowned pastry baker. So we're going to give it a go. We kind of looked around at the lay of the land as far as any bakeries around, and I think that Lakash's is in Burlington, and there's a few in Tewksbury, but really nothing in Wilmington. We love Wilmington. Wilmington's been wonderful to us, more than wonderful, and it just kind of made sense. I don't have to get in the car to drive. It's right there next to us. So that's it. I think everyone keeps wondering exactly what we're going to have. I know we're going to have cannolis. I know we're going to have a few other things, but we plan on trying to be. I was taught coming up through the ranks to be a good neighbor, to serve great quality product, and to take care of the people who come in, and take care of the people who work with you and for you. And that's what we've really tried to do with Tremezzo, and we're going to take that over to Josie's Bakery and do the exact same thing. A lot of people ask what Josie's Bakery, where the name came from. It was my wife's grandmother who unfortunately passed away at 94, but for 94 years she was the most fun, exciting, and cool person to be around. She used to curse in Italian. I never knew exactly what she was saying. And when you left her house, you were always full. And she always had some unbelievable. She was always cooking and always baking, and just the quintessential, Italian lady who was just yelling in the kitchen, having fun. And so I thought that having a place, I want to kind of dedicate it to her in her name. And I hope that when people leave Josie's Bakery, they feel like I did when I left her house.
That's great. You got me at Lobster Claw. Wasn't that some sort of a movie or something with Tom Cruise? You got me at something.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
cannolis sound good too. My colleagues have any?
Sure, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Gentlemen, good evening, thanks for being here, and obviously,
Thank you.
Rick, thank you for not only doing your business here in Wilmington and being part of our community, but looking to expand your business, or you could technically say add a new business to Wilmington, so we thank you for that. And we're looking forward to it. We're big fans of your restaurant, and also, I know Scott mentioned a lot of the things you've done. Also know that you do a lot of drives for items for needy folks. When you come in, you're often looking for items for folks who are in need, and so we really appreciate when you do that as well. So
My pleasure. Thank you.
we wish you a lot of success. I do want to ask if you had a timeline in mind for folks to...
It's going to be before Easter. I had planned on having it a little bit earlier than I had planned on having it by the end of this month. I don't think I can do that. I've been so busy at the restaurant that I haven't had as much opportunity to get over there as I wanted to, which that's a good and bad thing, I suppose, But it will definitely be open by Easter, which I think is April 21st this year.
Yes,
Third
that's
week,
right.
yes, yeah. I just made menus, I should know that. So by the second week in April is what I'm really, really, really shooting for. And I feel pretty confident that we can do that.
Great. Well, I think people at home are really, really excited for that, as well as in my household. So we wish you well, and again, thank you for choosing Wilmington to do your business here.
Thank you for the kind words.
First of all, I'd like to say it sounds like good therapy, but I need to correct counsel and the chairman. I know the chairman is 100% Italian. I'm half Irish and Italian. Now, you said lobster claw. You said lobster claw. We're here for a bakery. It's a lobster tail.
I never said lobster claw. I never said lobster
All
claw.
right, so, I know what I'm
You're right.
talking about a little
It's a
bit.
lobster tail, you're right.
As you can tell, I know what I'm talking about. But anyway, so my favorite cake is my birthday cake. It's Italian rum cake. So instead of me going to Lacasci's, I can go here now, not a problem?
Absolutely, absolutely.
All right, I like ricotta pie too. So I just thought I'd get those things right out in the open. But I want to wish you the best of luck.
Duly noted. Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to wish you the best of luck. You have an outstanding business. You just drive by. Cars there all the time, so you guys are obviously doing something right. And I've been in there. Food's delicious. But I'm really looking forward to that bakery. And my mother, her name was Josephine, but we used to call her Josie, and kind of like hearing that name, so
Yeah.
it says a lot. So,
Well, thank you.
yeah, and I won't say the swears in Italian, but I know half of it, even though I'm half Irish. But I appreciate that. Thank you, and I can imagine.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, and I like lobster claw and lobster tail. Yeah. But thank you for expanding your business in Wilmington, and an Italian bakery is perfect, just what we need. So congratulations and good luck and much success. I'm sure you will succeed over there with that business. So we're looking for a motion to,
Just FYI,
Oh,
Mr. Chair,
okay.
the recommendations from the health director and the building inspector are in favor. Neither the health director or the building inspector have any issues or concerns about the application.
so we're looking for a motion to accept the application for victualer's license.
I'll offer the motion to the applicant.
I'll second that motion.
Motion by Mr. Bendel, seconded by Mr. McCoy. Any further discussion? All in favor? And that's unanimous. Good luck.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Look forward to seeing you.
Thank you.
Next is a recognition to our police chief. And, geez, I don't know, Mike and I went back, we go back a few ways to school, so, in Sunday school and any type of school way back when. And you're just the best. I mean, I can't say it any other way. Your dedication to the town, to the citizens, 30-plus years of service. You're an innovator. You work. We just, through your efforts, we have a person who helps with opioid issues and crisis, people in need. I went to the event that you co-chaired with, I think, the police chief in Tewksbury up at Wamasot for kids with cancer. Your dedication and the respect that people have for you is just amazing. You will be truly missed for everything you do. It's just, I can't say enough. You're probably, well, not even probably, don't take this to be offensive to the other department heads, but you're the best department head we have. No offense, Jeff. But really, can't say enough about the outstanding work that you've done over these many years here in Wilmington, and you're going to be missed. Colleagues?
Yeah, I'll just say, Mike, you're a class act. I remember years ago serving on the auxiliary police with you. I remember back then, both our hairs were a little bit darker. But anyway, but I noticed, I see your wife embracing you, and if the camera's on, it shows really true love. You got your full family here. And as the chairman was saying, I was at that event in Tewksbury, Kids with Cancer. It was an outstanding program. But you've done a great job. I mean, you're a class act. I want to wish you all the best of luck in your future. Having you as the chief was really a great moment here in the town of Wilmington. And you got great dad, great mom, and that's what it's all about. And forget about being the police chief. You're a great human being. I want to wish you the best of luck. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening. Obviously, Chief, really happy to have you and your family here. I just want to give you the opportunity, if you want to introduce your family, that might be, I'm sure, really important to all of us.
Right to my right is my lovely wife Colleen, and my oldest son Michael, and my youngest son Jack.
Thank you, and obviously, they're very proud of you, and they should be. We're very proud of you. We're grateful, obviously, for your years of service here and your leadership in the town, and also for your military service before you were a police officer, and your leadership as a chief. I think it says a lot that you have a lot of members of your department here tonight who look to you, and we've been very fortunate to have you, and we just can't say enough about you as a person, and you've been a real role model for me and a mentor to me. Of every time I needed to ask something, you were always picked up the phone, whether it was night or day, and I know that's not just the case for myself, but for many others in this community who have let us know that. So we really appreciate you. We wish you well, and hope you'll enjoy your retirement. I know you're on to other endeavors, but hopefully you'll have some time to enjoy with your beautiful family, because you've earned it. So thank you so much, and we're really appreciative for all of you've done.
Thank you.
Yeah, I certainly wanted to offer some comments as well, and certainly my appreciation for the chief's services over all the time that I've been the manager, and even prior to that. I think Mike has been one of those folks that looks at the big picture, and I've been able to count on him in that respect in terms of whether it's budgets or bargaining, not only looking at his individual department, but the implications for other departments in the town overall. I think some of the things just to highlight in terms of Mike's accomplishments, the accreditation of the department has been a big one. The establishment of the firing range up in North Wilmington. Training has always been a big issue for the chief, and promoting that and providing the opportunities for his officers to do that has been a major objective, and I'm proud to say that he's accomplished that. Also, just the whole substance abuse piece, and looking at substance abuse not in the typical law enforcement manner where you pursue that as a crime, but really looking at it for what it is, which is a mental health issue, and pursuing it in that vein, and ultimately with the establishment of the substance abuse program. So, Mike and I have disagreed on a number of things over the years, but I will tell you that it's nice to have department heads who don't always just agree with you, because it's important to have folks that'll tell you the way it is, and that's important. So, Mike, I appreciate your dedication to the job, and good luck in the future.
Thank you. If I could just make a couple of words, please. Sure. If possible. I want to thank the board, obviously, and Mr. Hull for all the support they've given me over the years. As police chief, obviously, it's a crazy job. You serve many masters in the process, and you always try to do it with the utmost dignity and respect, but I gotta say, she's my strength. I couldn't have done a minute of this job without my wife next to me. It's so special to know that you can go through whatever you go through when you're out doing the job, to go home and have somebody that always has your back, somebody that always has your best interest, somebody that tells you to speed it up when you need to, slow it down when you don't. So, you know, I really have to say, I couldn't have done without it. Thank you.
Mike, we have a letter of commendation for you that I'd like to present, and I want to read the inscription in it. On behalf of the citizens of the town of Wilmington, the Board of Selectmen wishes to commend you for your distinguished service you have performed for the past 31 years as patrolman, sergeant, lieutenant, deputy police chief, and police chief for the town of Wilmington's Police Department. We recognize you for the faithful and devoted service to your profession and to the department in which you served. Your many years of service to the town and to the citizens of Wilmington are most appreciated, and our sincere wishes are extended to you for a happy and fulfilling retirement. And let me get that for you. Why don't we all come around and make a presentation? Jeff?
Little muffins. They want little muffins.
Very happy. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate it. Thank you so much. Guys, thank you very much.
Appreciate it. I'll give you my private one. Mr. Chairman, if I could.
Yes,
I would certainly
please.
be, I know I got emotional when I speak about my family, but I have another family, and it's the police department itself. And all of those successes that I've been able to work on, it was with a team. Nothing was done on my own, nothing was done without, you know, collective vision and without collective effort. So I just want to say that I'm proud and I'm good with this move at this point. I know that there are several individuals ready to move up and through the ranks. And I'll tell you, I was reflecting earlier with one of the other individuals. I think of leadership as selflessness, mostly. You know, you're willing to step up and do things for others before you do things for yourself. And I always say that the town of Wilmington's in a really good place with the cadre of individuals they have that will be up and coming through the ranks of the Wilmington Police Department. So I want to thank them and give them a round of applause for everything they do. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, the next appointment we have on the agenda is in regards to the additional members to the Economic Development Committee. I would suggest to my fellow board members that we hold off until the next meeting when Mr. Eaton is here, so he can make that presentation too at the same time, so. Okay, thank you. And we're going to go on to communications. Mr. Hull.
Yes, under communications, the first item we have is the town meeting review committee. This is a email, and it was from the town moderator, Rob Peterson, and he is suggesting that the board hold off on the appointment and establishment of a a review committee until after town meeting, and then at that point, have a committee up and running, and also suggesting that the committee be required to report back to the Board of Selectmen on a monthly basis to keep the board informed on the status of their efforts.
Thank you. Makes sense that we hold off. Okay.
Next is memo regarding consulting fees. This is from the building inspector's office. We've had in the last 8 months or so at least 3 different occasions where requests have come in or applications have come in resulting in one case in some title work being required by town council. It was actually to confirm information that was submitted by the applicant and a couple of other similar circumstances. And so the building inspector had indicated to me, and I agreed, that it would be advisable to, in those instances where we require consulting services or legal services, that the applicant be required to put up an amount of money in an account to be overseen by the treasurer for the purposes of engaging in those services. So the building inspector has initiated that as of March 7th, and this is really very similar to what the Planning and Conservation Commission already have, where if there are certain expertise that's needed, the proponent would pay for the costs associated with that. Next is correspondence memo from me to the board with regard to Selectmen's meeting agendas, and I note here that added to the agenda is a reference announcements. I think for some time now, new business is oftentimes used as for the purpose of announcements. New business is really should be intended for discussions about matters that could not be foreseen within the 48 hours leading up to the meeting. And so it's my recommendation that going forward, if members have issues that you would like to have on the agenda, that you either make me or the chair aware of those items and they can be added onto the agenda, but matters that are substantive in nature that are going to involve discussion and perhaps a vote really should not be taken up under new business. The announcements piece, I would suggest, can be used for providing general information, whether it's about a meeting that a member of the board attended and wishes to update the other members, or an upcoming meeting potentially, or information of a general nature, announcements or recognition of particular individuals or groups. And that is what this memo discusses.
Mr. Chairman, could I make a comment on this? I would hope to think that the Board of Selectmen, I will wait for Mr. Eaton to come to the next meeting. I think if we need to discuss this, we should. I disagree with what the town manager is saying. I mean, I believe as members of the Board of Selectmen, who we do represent our constituents, that it just seems, to be totally honest, that if we go with this, it seems like we have to notify the town manager and notify you and have it at a following meeting. I don't think we're doing anything that's not incorrect. I think as members of the board, we have an opportunity and a right to discuss. I mean, I'm not here going to talk about the man on the moon. However, if I believe something that's valuable and has input, and I hear something, I think it's, not only myself, but Mr. Bendel, anybody should be able to come to the Selectmen's meeting. You know, we represent the citizens of this community as a whole, and we should have an opportunity to discuss matters. You know, and it's majority rules. If somebody wants to make a motion for an upcoming meeting, I think they have the right to do that, and the rest of the board can either vote yea or nay, and then we move on. You know, so I would hope to think that we wait for Mr. Eaton. I think we should have this discussion. I just don't want to have this rubber stamped, and we got to go through the process, or got to talk to the manager, then the manager's going to talk to you whether you want it or not, and that's what it really comes down to, and I just think that's totally grossly unfair to do that.
No, I don't have any problem with new business being brought up with issues. This is something added on for announcements for people who want to make announcements of veterans or, that they, like the manager said, attended a meeting. It's not really a new business, because new business are for particular matters to be taken up. Like if you want to make a motion that we consider something for the next agenda or something, that can be brought up at that time. I think you're just separating it out to make it clear.
Well, it
That's
sounds
my
a little bit
understanding.
different, but with the executive board, I want to make sure that if I have something to say, I want to say it.
Sure.
And if the board decides not to go with that, that's fine, and I get that and I respect it. Just like Mr. Bendel yourself, if you want to have something to offer to the board, we should be able to do that. We shouldn't, should be
Sure.
no dictatorship whatsoever. It should be.
There's not a dictatorship.
No, I know,
at
I'm just
all.
saying that. By looking at that, I see the town manager looking a little bit different on that, of your explanation. And
I mean, that's my
I-
understanding
and
of
I-
it, unless I'm,
Well, I would
Unless
say that, from my perspective, having conversations about individuals without their prior knowledge is problematic, particularly when and this is just one example, when that matter has been known for some time now. That's one example of an instance where if there's going to be a conversation about an individual board member on another board or a topic that is going to involve substantive conversation and the prospect of a vote, then those should be items that are posted on the agenda so that the public and perhaps the individuals involved are forewarned and can be present if they choose.
which would make sense. I mean, you're bringing something out without giving someone a fair opportunity to take part in it.
No, I agree, and I'll even be more specific, and we had this conversation, and I brought up Mr. Veerman. All I did was, according to Mr. Veerman, in an open meeting, stating that he was cleared for ethics. He said that at open meeting. I mean, if somebody mentions me or something in an open meeting, I would expect to, if I did do that, then I want to follow up with that. And, I did nothing out of the realm relative to this. I even talked to the manager. We had a discussion today about that. So, when somebody says something out there in the general public, and they make a comment, and there's a lot of interest that you've been cleared through the state ethics, well, I want to hear that. And I want to hear if that's the case, and I went one step further. I mean, even with myself, when I was bringing up Article 2, being a member of the Board of Selectmen, I call ethics. You do a phone call, just like anybody else. You get the lawyer of the day. They give you what their opinion is, but they also make sure that you go to the state website. I required a 268A, 23B, and 3. And I'm going to, now that you brought that up and talked about it, no, I just want,
let me
if
say
I can
this.
finish, 2 minutes. I mean, right here, there's a disclosure form that I had to ask the conflict of interest relative to the State Ethics Commission. They said, we don't believe that's in conflict, but however, this is what we want you to do. I followed protocol. I had my wife download this from the computer, answered all the questions, gave it to the clerk. Miss Santini was also, there was a question about her at one time. She's done the same thing. We both have the same form. Answer the questions to the clerk's, through the State Ethics Commission, download it on the computer, go to the clerk's office. I have a timestamp from the clerk. And to be honest, Mr. Veerman stated that, and there's nowhere in this town hall that he's done exactly what I have done and Jackie Santini has done.
Do you have mine? Because I've done it a couple of
Oh, I
times
didn't want to
myself.
ask. If
Oh,
you said,
okay.
if you said you did, can I tell you? That's the whole point, Mr. Kyra.
I
I believe you.
understand that.
If you say it, and if Mr. Veerman says it, I have to believe that.
Right.
But it's not here in the town hall what we've done.
So we should take it up under an agenda item
Well,
to give him the opportunity to be here.
No, He
So-
already explains it in the letter. It's not like
Well-
I'm, banging the drum on this thing. When you say something in public that you've done that, and I have to believe that. He did that. Fine. He said he talked to somebody. Fine. But there's a difference when you got to fill out the form, and it's a 268A 23B3. And you've done it. If you say you've done it, I believe you, Mr. Chairman. I've done it. Jackie Santini's done it. But Mr. Veerman, nowhere in the town hall is in the clerk's office or the manager's office of the same form that we all had to do. That's all.
And this is exactly why, in my estimation, this is the type of thing that needs to be posted as an agenda item so that if Mr. Veerman chooses to be here and respond in the moment, he can do so. As it is right now, there's prospect of innuendo and suggestion out there, and he has no opportunity to respond. I think any member who serves on a volunteer board, or anybody for that matter, should have the opportunity, if there's going to be questions raised about their integrity, they should have the opportunity to be present and defend themselves.
But I did not say that about his integrity. The bottom line is, we are the appointing authority, and it should be filed with us. And I had no issue voting for the 4th of July. I'm not, Mr. Manager, we're going to another area here. I'm not talking about a gentleman's integrity, not. I don't have an issue with Mr. Van at all. He said that, and I just wanted to see it, and it's not there. That's all.
Mr.
Thank you.
Bendel?
Mr. Chairman, if I could, just getting back to the memo, I appreciate the manager's efforts on this. I think this is an effort for us to make sure that we're in compliance with the open meeting laws, and I see, my understanding of this would be announcements, perhaps a shout out to a veteran or plugging an event that's coming up in the community. And then the way I see it, we still have 2 opportunities to exactly what Mr. McCoy is suggesting. If we have a very important pressing issue that comes up from a resident that we need to discuss, we have 2 ways to do that. Number one, we have the 2 weeks in between that we could let you know to get it on the agenda, or if it's within the 48 hours before the meeting, we could bring it up under new business for a future meeting. I understand that we can't discuss it at that moment, but it just gives us another opportunity to make sure that it is discussed at a future meeting. So that's just my
Right.
understanding of it.
Thank you.
Next is a memo just highlighting or updating the status of the North Wilmington Commuter Rail station. There was a conference call this past week involving Chairman Kyra, Fire Chief McMahon, Police Chief Pagonis, Deputy Fire Chief Kavanaugh, and participants from the MBTA. It was hosted by Senator Tarr, and also involved Rep. Gordon and Robertson. Looking at the situation in North Wilmington, as everyone knows, we've had issues with trains parked as they're on the tracks as they're allowing passengers to embark and disembark. They actually went out and did a review during a 1-week period to identify the number of passengers that were getting off and on. And there's 5 particular periods on the inbound train where there's very little activity. The discussion took place about the prospect of, rather than allowing that stop to continue as a flag stop where the train slows down, and if there happens to be passengers, they would come to a complete stop. The discussion was about the prospect of not stopping at all for these 5 particular times that run from roughly 11:30 a.m. to 11:30 p.m. And trying that on a trial basis. The consensus at the end of that conversation was to have the legislative delegation as well as representatives from the MBTA attend the meeting of the Board of Selectmen on April 8th. I think the expectation is to try to receive some input from the public as well as to whether this proposal should be a go. So that is the plan at this point. They will be scheduled for April 8th. Next is a status on the Woburn Street, Lowell Street intersection and the Route 38 project. This past week, Valerie Gingrich, the planning director, Paul Aluni, the town engineer, and I attended a meeting at the Boston Regional Metropolitan Planning Organization in Boston. They are a group that looks at funding for a number of projects throughout the metropolitan Boston area, infrastructure projects. There's a 5-year sliding schedule that's based upon the federal funding cycle. And we have these 2 projects that potentially could be done in 2024. The staff from the MPO is actually suggesting that the Route 38 project may be a candidate for moving up 2 years to 2022. So we were in there this past week to advocate for that. As previously noted in correspondence, there's been letters of support from our legislative delegation and the Board of Selectmen. We plan to go back in this coming week and also continue to make our case on these 2 projects. I would note that the Estimated cost for the intersection project at Woburn and Lowell is $3,944,000. The estimated cost associated with the Woburn Street, with the Main Street project is $12,530,687. These projects would be funded through a combination of state and federal money. The key for us is that we have the engineering work done, which we plan to have done in time for these projects.
It's also worth noting that there are 5 projects on this tip, and we have 2 out of the 5 projects, so we're really pushing for this to get done for us.
Next, under correspondence, I wanted to announce that, as you heard, Chief Mike Bagonis, his last day with the town is April 5th, and he will be then retiring, appointing on an interim basis Lieutenant Joseph Desmond. He has been with the department for 30-plus years, started in 1988, moved up through the ranks. I think he will do a very good job for us on an interim basis, and then ultimately, through the civil service process, we're having an assessment center. This was actually put in motion prior to the chief's announcement. You'll recall with the retirement of Deputy Chief Bob Richter back in end of November, we were targeting this assessment exam, which basically involves a set of individuals from other communities across the state. Many of them are former police chiefs or current police chiefs. Some may be HR people, but they serve as a panel, and they pose a series of scenarios that the candidates seeking these positions need to respond to. Their responses are scored, and all of this is in compliance with civil service. So we've been working with the State Human Resources Division to prepare this. It's slated for May 20th. My expectation is that an appointment for a permanent position will be made sometime the end of June, beginning of July. But certainly in the interim, particularly where both positions will be vacant, it's important to have an interim. I think Mr. Desmond will do the job. He's certainly got a lot of work cut out for him between acting as deputy and police chief, but he's been well coached, so I'm confident we'll be in good hands.
Congratulations.
Next under correspondence, this comes by way of Lou Samaglia, an announcement Wednesday, April 10th, 1900 hours to 2100 hours, which I believe is 5 o'clock to 9 p.m. at the Knights of Columbus. An open invitation to active duty veterans, police, fire, and EMTs. Join us at Let's Buddy Up Military and First Responders Social Clubs, where local military and first responders connect with an evening of food, fun, and camaraderie. And this is, again, at the Knights of Columbus, and the date is April 10th. Also under correspondence is the annual notice that is filed by Xfinity. I think we received this same notice from Verizon prior to the last meeting. Provides information about the various rates and the program schedule. Also provides a sample bill to the board, but it also is information that goes out to customers.
Okay, thank you. On to board to consider items.
We have under board to consider recommendation from the town clerk, Tina Tomei Conway, with respect to potential election workers, and there's quite a list. How would you like to proceed, Mr. Chair? Would you like me to go through all the names, or? It's probably 35
Quite
or
a
so.
few of them.
Yep.
Probably suppose we should read them into the record.
So on the list for recommendation, Alfred Antenarelli, Jerry Arbo, Donald Armstrong, Catherine Bimbo, Barbara Bishop, Karen Bloom, Helen Brady, Jean Buck, James Buckley, Maria Burns, Eileen Calvo, Joanna Clayton, Sandra Cosman, Sarah Cosman, Linda Constantino, Marie Creeth, Beverly Dalton, Alma D'Antonio, Mary Dion, Wendy Decidu, Carol Dwyer, Mary Giroux, Jean Grant, Charlotte Grasso, Lorraine Herman, Andrea Hauser, John Coronis, Mary Kiesinger, Catherine Kilday, Cynthia Kilday, Carolyn King, April Kingston, Mary Krikorian, Janice Lucas, Janet Lyons, Janet Marcello, Rosalie McGonalag, Cynthia McHugh, Patricia McKenna, Susan McNamara, Medora Miller, Kristen Murphy, Kim Mytek, Jean Nassif, Judith Perry, Gail Protopopoulos, Janice Quint, Anne Raynon, Carolyn Kenny, Margaret Reese, Judith Ravelis, David Reese, Susan Reese, Clarice Ross, Alice Rourke, Rosemary Russo, Jacqueline Santini, Julia Sabrachi Maros, Mary Schultz, Joan Searforce, Annette Shelley, Ruth Ann Soderholm, Ellen Sullivan, Robert Sweet, Nicole Vitale, Sandra Volpe, Margaret White, Linda Wilson, and Diana Wilson. Williamson, Linda Williamson and Diana Wilson.
So do we have a motion to accept the names just read as election workers for the year 2019?
So moved.
There's a motion made by Mr. Bendel, seconded
Second.
by Mr. McCoy. Any discussion? All in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you.
Next under board to consider is a letter submitted by Lou Simaglia, Director, Department of Veterans Services. Dear Chairman Kyra, I am sending this letter on behalf of the Department of Veterans Services. We are requesting permission to have our annual Memorial Day parade and ceremony at the Wildwood Cemetery. The date of the parade this year is May 27, 2019. The parade will step off promptly at 10:00 from the Market Basket parking lot and will proceed down Main Street, down Middlesex Avenue at our town common. The ceremony will start promptly at 1100 at the Veterans Lot in Wilmington at the Wildwood Cemetery. We'd also invite you to say a few words to help us honor our fallen comrades. Thank you for the Board of Selectmen's continued support for the veterans of Wilmington.
Okay, is there a motion to grant permission for the parade and ceremony on May 27th?
I'll offer that motion.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion by Mr. Bendel, seconded by Mr. McCoy. Any discussion? All in favor? Unanimous?
Next is a board to consider the renewal of a taxi cab license for Wilmington Taxi. This is a annual request, and the recommendation from the police chief upon review, Wilmington Police Department recommends approval of the taxi cab owner permit and taxi cab driver permit for Timothy J. Flynn, Wilmington Taxi.
And is there a motion to grant the request for a renewal of a taxi cab license?
So moved.
Mr. Bendel, seconded by Mr.
Sure.
McCoy. Any discussion or questions on it? Okay, all in favor? And it's unanimous.
To require a signature. Next is the renewal request for the taxi cab operator's license for Timothy J. Flynn. As noted previously, the police chief recommends approval.
But we ju-
So
we had the license, okay.
right,
So
the
is there a
license
motion
is
for
one-
the, operating the license for the taxi cab? Is there a motion?
I'll make that motion, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Second.
Mr. McCoy, seconded by Mr. Bendel. Any discussion? All in favor? And that's unanimous.
And this will require your signature. You can sign it afterwards. Next is a board to consider request from Khalid Hazmi, Tony's Ice Cream, to obtain a hawk and pedal license.
Okay, do we have a motion to grant the license, or hawk and pedal license, so that
Actually, before
we
you
can sell, you can
take
sell
that,
ice cream to our children?
He's a good guy.
before you take that step, let me just note that the health director recommends approval. One of the requirements, as you may recall, is individuals that are seeking to pursue hawk and pedal licenses and other licenses to this effect require fingerprinting. Mr. Hamid has not had the opportunity yet to be fingerprinted. I think he's scheduled to come in tomorrow. So my recommendation, everything from what I understand from a background check, checks out to this point, barring the fingerprinting. So I would recommend the board approve of the hawk and pedal license contingent upon him obtaining the fingerprinting and any final background review.
Yeah, do they need a Cory check, do we know?
That's part of it.
It's part of it, okay. Okay, so there's a motion with those contingents attached, that we have the fingerprinting and the Cory check completed. Do you have a motion?
So move, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Mr. McCoy, seconded by Mr. Bendel. Any discussion? All in favor? Voted. Still signing it. And that's it for board to consider items.
It is.
Okay, on to public comments, and please be mindful of the fact that public comments are public comments. You can certainly ask questions if you choose to, but try to keep those questions pertaining to the agenda. If they're not, fellow board members are not considered to answer it if they don't choose to, but they certainly can. I just would remind you that if you answer questions that are not part of the agenda, it could be violating open meeting law. Okay, so public comments. Yes.
Hi, good evening, Frank West, 2 Birchwood Road. First and foremost, Mr. Chairman, too, I'd like to congratulate Chief DeBonis on his retirement, and I believe also through Mr. Hull's appointment of Acting Chief Desmond. I think the town will be well served. So I just wanted to say that first and foremost. But I had a question regarding this whole, like when we do public comments, and you keep, referring to the open meeting law, that anything that's said from the audience is said through the board could be a potential violation of the open meeting law. Just wonder if you could explain that a little bit, because we're at an open meeting. It's the meeting itself's been documented. There is an agenda. An agenda item is public comments. So I'm just kind of curious how, if the scenarios or whatever that would fall into a violation of the open meeting law. It just doesn't make a lot of sense to me, that's all.
Yeah, you can make your public comments, but if you're asking questions, they have to pertain to the agenda. So if you're asking questions outside of the scope of the agenda, the board members don't have to answer that question. They can take it back and answer it at the next meeting and put it on the agenda to answer it at the next meeting. Typically, what's been done in the past is that everybody's, answered the questions that have been posed to them to the best of their ability, and if not, then they take it and try to answer it at the next meeting. But it's up to the members themselves as to whether they want to answer that question. And answering that question could cause a violation of the open meeting law. And that's how it's structured, so.
Like I said, it just seems a little confusing, because if I wanted to say, gee, I want to talk about the Wildwood School, for example,
You can.
and, just making some sort of a comment, and then, throwing it to you, Mr. Chairman, and throwing it to the board, we're at a public meeting, and the agenda item of public comments is the agenda item, so it just doesn't make a lot of sense to me how you could violate the open meeting law for answering a question with the majority of the board being present in a public meeting that's being recorded and all that. Just,
Well, if you're talking, so for example, you're saying the Wildwood School, and you give a question, hey, we should get into Wildwood School, and what are your comments on that? By not putting it on the agenda, we're not allowing the public in general the opportunity to come here and talk about it. We can discuss it here if if that's an issue, and the board members can talk about it, but if you say, I'd like to discuss the Wildwood School, can you put that on the next agenda? And if it fits in the next agenda, we would do that. If you want to just have a frank discussion about it, if the board members wish to engage in that, they can do that. But it's not on the agenda, so technically it could be a violation of the open meeting law.
okay. Just, like I said, Kevin, it just doesn't make a lot of sense, and again, I don't want the Wildwood School on the agenda. I just mentioned that as an example of something that's specifically not on today's agenda.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Suzanne Sullivan, 60 Lawrence Street. Well, I'm here tonight for two reasons. One reason is I was able to go, I was actually hoping Jonathan would be here, but I was able to go to one of the public meetings for the Ledges project, the 40B on the Wilmington line last week. Of course, it's a very disturbing project. But I'm coming here tonight, and I don't actually need an answer tonight, but I would like an answer maybe at the next meeting. That I would like the town to go on the record what their position is about the trucks that will be going in and out of there and using that site. From what people have been told in Reuben, that they're going to be leaving those trucks on Old Main Street or possibly on the other local streets in Wilmington, because they have no place to put them. And they're asking for an official, the residents anyways, maybe an official position by the town. And of course, I think it would be terrible because the diesel, I mean, it's a horrible project. I just can't even believe it's happening. And Wilmington residents will be impacted by this project also. It's not just Reuben residents. And those trucks will be using Wilmington roads, I would imagine somehow. The truck routes haven't been designated yet, but the idea that they're gonna be having 60 truckloads a day, and they could potentially be selling the gravel and the rock at that site, which I don't know how that can be possible, but that's what the discussion was at that meeting, that they could actually be selling the material from that site. So they need a place to load, to put the trucks in queue. So it's a concern. So I would like the town to have an official opinion, so when people talk about it in Woburn, they know what the official opinion is. That's one issue. The second issue is, I know it's not, you can't anticipate it, but I've asked a number of times about the status of the Schroppers Farm and and I haven't gotten an answer. This is gonna be the fourth time now that I've brought it up in public comments, and if the point of public comments is to bring something up and then maybe have a discussion or have it on an agenda item, whatever. This is gonna be the fourth time. There's a lot of rumors flying around right now that the town, that there's been developers in to talk to the town about developing that site. And from my understanding was that maybe the town was in discussions with the owners of the property. I would kind of like a status report. Is that something, is that true that, there's a development going on that site? And that they've been in the town hall discussing it with town department heads? Or is the town still negotiating for that site? Because people say rumors, and maybe they're just rumors and it's not true. But I would like to get a status update, and this is gonna be the fourth time I'm asking.
I believe we've had conversation with their attorney in regards to the potential of looking at that
Yeah, I mean,
facility.
there's-
Not to give executive session information
There's been
out, but-
discussions with Mr. Crowley, the attorney. There have not been discussions, I would say, within the last probably a couple of months, month and a half, but there have been discussions about the prospect. I don't really want to go any further than that. And with respect to folks, potential developers, talking to representatives of the town, that has been the case. There has not been any concrete details. The conversations have been very preliminary at this point. And, you know, what I can tell you is that the individuals have been looking to find out what level of support, if any, the town would offer, and the town has made no commitments whatsoever. So that's where we are on that.
Level of support for development, you mean?
Yeah, level of support for some kind of a development at Sharapa. Not necessarily. I think there's been conversations about rezoning or potentially not rezoning.
So they have, right, so, I mean, I'm just wondering, because I think a lot of people are wondering, you know, is there any hope for that, for the town to get that property, or is there no hope for that, to the town to get that property? Because it is really the last property, and, I mean, I don't know what else we're gonna do when we have crunches for field space or open space.
Yeah, not to divulge executive session information, but the price is awfully substantial. That all the board members seem to think, every one of us, seem to think is extremely high priced.
So if
I
you-
mean, it's hard to.
I would also
give
just
a-
comment
to
that,
give
you know, the town, ultimately, you know, this becomes a matter of priorities. And, you know, I know there's a lot of focus on the amount of money that the town has in reserve, and free cash is always an item that gets brought up, which certainly the town is fortunate in having the amount of money set aside that we do. But as came out of the facilities plan, there's approximately $143 million worth of costs associated with either upgrading existing buildings. Most of them, you know, were either built in the 50s or 60s. The Shawshene School was, you know, next to the middle school and the high school, was built in 1970, so that's the newest school. But, you know, in some cases, looking at replacing buildings, so there's all of those costs or all those projects that need to be looked at some point in time, as well as a myriad of other projects. So, you know, as with any situation that the town deals with, there's more demands than there are resources to pay for some of these things. So, you know, that's a discussion that I think we've had internally as to how does acquisition of the Sharapa farm stand in comparison to some of these other projects. A new substation, for example, has been talked about. You know, it's been talked about for a very long time, but there's no question in the last 10 years or so, there's been much more development along the Ballardvale corridor than has been the case in the past. And, you know, we've talked just tonight about the challenges of trying to deal with the rail. So that's a priority. There's a number of priorities, and I think there needs to be some consensus about where does acquisition of property stand in that mix.
Well, I mean, I definitely didn't want to have a debate about policy, but but since you bring it up, I do have to say that I understand that there's always going to be demands for buildings. There's always going to be demands. You can always build a building. You can't build open space. Once it's gone forever. And it's nice that those conversations are happening internally, but I think the time has come that we should actually ask the residents what they think. It's good that they're happening internally, but I would like to have that conversation externally with the residents. And I don't understand, you say that property's worth all this money. Have you actually done, I can remember in the back of my mind, there was some discussion about having an assessment done on that property. And I'm wondering, have you done that? Because you sound so confident that it's worth all that money. Do you have it,
Well,
did you have a
I don't think it's
professional?
worth all that money. Yes, we've done an assessment, and that was done
And is that public
under-
information?
That's right, that was in executive session.
But why isn't that
and
public
because
information?
it's-
If you
Because it
did,
was part of the negotiations. So I.
Yeah, but we're kind
How
of
do you-
teetering on the edge
yeah.
here. So the
I-
fact of the matter is that the
Yeah.
property owners, and, you know, I understand that any property owner wants to maximize their return for selling property, but the value that they place on the property is a pretty steep value, and there has been an appraisal done. That is not public record at this point because we're still in discussions, and providing that information is not going to be helpful to efforts to negotiate. If we can't engage in discussions like this, negotiations in a public forum, it just doesn't work that
I
way.
understand that, I just don't understand why an appraisal is executive session material. It's just an appraisal. I mean,
Well,
anybody could
it's-
hire somebody to go out and do an appraisal. If I had the money, I could hire somebody to go out and appraise the property if I wanted to. I don't understand why that's executive session material. That's all.
Because it's used as a basis of the discussions with
for
the property
negotiation.
owner.
Yeah.
So what I guess what I'm hearing is that Sharapis Farm is not a priority for you guys.
No,
that
you're
what
not-
I'm hearing?
No, you're not hearing that at all.
No, what you're hearing is that this has been a focus of attention, but that we can't view the potential acquisition of this property in a vacuum, that there are many other issues that need to be put into the mix when we're looking at the prospect of this.
Right, so that those, right, but it seems like the other issues seem to be more of a priority than Sharapis.
Well, that's your point of view. Yeah. Okay. Yes.
Good evening, Kevin McDonald. I rise to offer some solutions to some of the challenges that the town faces. On the agenda tonight, one of the agenda items was the North Wilmington commuter rail station. And for those folks at home who do not realize this, the town pays hundreds of thousands of dollars to the state to have 2 stops in Wilmington. And people have been beating their heads against the wall trying to figure out what can we do to keep this public safety problem from continuing. And so I'm rising tonight to offer some solutions to that. And my solution is to request the MBTA to rope off a section on the first passenger car that gets reserved for that Wilmington stop. After the train leaves that stop, that roped off area can be taken down. Therefore, the train doesn't have to block the street.
I may answer that because we asked them that question, as a matter of fact, and they said that you couldn't do that because of handicap issues. It's against the law to do that. And we did ask them that type of question, Kevin.
You asked them if you can rope up half of that
We
car
asked them
for
if
like
there
25
could-
people?
We asked them if there could be an area in which everybody could move toward so that it would not block off the area, and their response was no. Because we don't, their answer was we don't go around and ask individuals their status of health. They're not allowed to do that, so.
I'm talking about,
Just-
all right, I'm just offering my opinion.
Okay, yeah, that's great.
If
It's good
you would let me
opinion.
finish speaking.
Yeah,
Okay. This could be done at the initial start of the train's route, when nobody's on the train. You rope off that section, therefore nobody's allowed to sit on that section until the Wilmington stop or after the Wilmington stop. The North Wilmington stop, I don't see it as being handicap accessible. You can correct me if I'm wrong on that, but if it is by chance handicap accessible, it's certainly not handicap accessible for that first passenger car. In addition to that, what I'd like to offer is, we have a large police force and a large fire department. And I don't see why there's any reason why we can't position a police cruiser on the other side of that tracks in case there's an emergency, along with an ambulance, along with a fire engine. We do have mutual aid that we can call upon in the event of an emergency, but to position vehicles, they know what time the stops are coming. They know when that train schedule is. And for the life of me, I can't figure out why this has been such a contentious issue when it seems like a very simple solution, taking into consideration that the town pays, I think it's either $400,000 we pay to the MBTA, Mr. Hull? Or is it more now?
Probably, may even be more than that.
More than that? So it's close to $500,000 that we're paying to the MBTA to have 2 stops, and we can't even get a simple solution to this problem. The other thing that I would like to bring up relative to public safety is Ms. Sullivan brought up the Ledges project. I want to deal with that in a second. There's a large-scale project in North Reading. It's going to have 450 units. And I believe the calculation that I came up with was there's close to like 750,000 gallons a day of septic effluent going to be going into the soil. And that project happens to be directly beside our water well field. As you know, the Maple Meadow well field got shut down because of contaminants that contain carcinogens coming from the Olin site, polluting those wells. And Olin is much further away than that project in North Reading. And so what I wanted to mention about the Ledges project in Woburn, the town actually has a golden opportunity here. The town buys gravel at top dollar from vendors, and they have a recycling center directly beside the Ledges project, where we could probably negotiate to buy material very, very cheap. But I did have an idea what could be done with all that material at the Ledges project. The entire Olin project, the entire site of that contaminated project that shut down 5 of our wells could be dug up, put on trains, and taken to landfills. And I think Olin, if the town of Wilmington and the city of Woburn negotiated with Olin and the developers of that site, they could find a place for that entire ledge pile by taking that and filling in the Olin project. And I would think that would make Woburn completely happy, because we no longer would have a contaminated project. Olin is a multi-billion-dollar company. It's not a rinky-dink company. In addition to that, there were other companies that contributed allegedly to the contamination on that site that would probably participate in that cleanup. And maybe Mr. Hull can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but it's my recollection that the Olin responsibility for cleaning that site up, they're sending the bill to those other companies. And so my simple request to you, Mr. Chairman and Mr. Hall and the rest of the board, is would you be willing to set up a meeting with the city of Woburn, the developer of the Ledges site, and the Olin company to see if we could come up with a solution to completely clean that site up and use all the material that's coming out of the Ledges project to fill in that contaminated site. So those are a couple solutions that I had on that. And I did have a question for Mr. Bendel, since you're a teacher at the Shawshene Tech, if you would be kind enough to answer this question. Can you tell us how many students are now at the Shawshene Tech from Wilmington? Do you know that number?
I know it's a few hundred kids. It varies for different times. This year, I think it's up 19 kids from last year.
Do you know, can you give us a rough estimate? Like, was it 200, 300?
I think it's in the order of just around 400, if I had to guess.
400 students, okay. The reason why I asked that question is, I was reading through the budget, and I noticed that the Shawshene Tech budget is increasing $700,000 in 1 year. And so we were told that it's because of an increase in enrollment. And I started thinking, when do the students take the entrance exam to get into the Shawshene Tech? Do you know that?
It's in the spring.
In the spring.
Mr. Bendel,
So
Just to be
Just to
clear,
clarify.
so the original, as I mentioned at multiple Finance Committee meetings, the original assessment that I was provided from the Superintendent, Tim Broderick, estimated that Wilmington's assessment would increase $700,000. That number was what I did incorporate in the budget because that was the best information I had at the time that the budget was prepared. Subsequent to that time, Mr. Broderick has advised that the number is expected to increase by about $558,000. All of these numbers that he's providing, just as the numbers that we provide in terms of estimates, are strictly estimates because we don't know, he doesn't know what state aid is going to be, Chapter 70 school ed reimbursements and funding is going to be, so he's offering his best estimate. And the reason that was given to me as to why the increase is as substantial as it is because the number of students from Wilmington is going up approximately 19 students. Billerica, their number is going down 66 students. So, the pie is shifting, so to speak. So you're seeing one community that is having a dramatic reduction in the number of students attending. Our community, I believe, of the remaining communities, has the highest increase. So the proportion of the pie that is going to be assessed to Wilmington is increasing.
Thank you for that, Mr. Hull. I'm not so sure I agree with you, and I'm going to tell you why. Because Mr. Bendel just got finished telling us that the entrance exams is taking place in the spring. So therefore, it hasn't even taken place yet. So how in the world would you know how many students are going to go there?
Mr. Through you, if I could. There's a difference between being accepted into the school and taking the exam in which you will be placed into your classes. There's a difference there, should be noted. So
Right,
there's a
but-
number of students
but
accepted.
you just bolstered my point, because if you don't know that, how can you come up with numbers?
But we know the number of students that have applied and the number that'll be accepted. They haven't taken their exam yet.
And how many applied? Can you tell us?
I don't know. I
You
leave
just
that to
said
the school
19.
administration.
You just said 19.
Well, it's up
These-
19. I don't know exactly the
These
number.
are projected numbers. Again, Kevin, they do not have a crystal ball where they are able to look, at a date in time and say, as of the opening of school in September of 2019, there's going to be exactly X number of students. They look at enrollment data, as I understand it, in the October timeframe, and applications. I can't speak specifically to all the indicators that Mr. Broderick uses for making his projections, but as I mentioned earlier, they are just projections. They're his best estimates based upon the information that he had available to him when he was preparing the budget. So those best estimates, they're not guaranteed, but their best estimates are suggesting that Wilmington's number is going to go up 19, Billerica's is going to drop 66, and then Tewksbury and Bedford and Burlington are going to increase marginally, if I recall.
Okay, appreciate that, Mr. Hull. One of the things that I wanted to mention, since you did say that, is that I believe you said the other night that Wilmington has $91 million in the banks. The last year I put in a public record request, it seems like it increased like close to $20 million in a year. So what I'm seeing, that free cash is going up, and it's going up as a result of over budgeting. And so could you commit to us and the taxpayers in Wilmington that any amount of money that doesn't get expended for actual costs will not be taxed to the taxpayers and not be put into free cash, but you'll alleviate their tax bills? Can you commit to us, and can this board commit to us tonight on that?
Statutorily, the town is required, when a budget is estimated at X, and the expenditures in that budget come in at X minus, those funds get returned to the general fund and ultimately cycle out into free cash. That is the way municipal finance works. That is the way the Commonwealth of Massachusetts has decided that municipalities have to operate. One of the things that I find curious is this constant scolding about money that gets returned to the town, when in fact, if the town was to go in the opposite direction and under budget and be constantly coming back to the town, I suspect we'd also be held in a dim light. So, the town tries to estimate conservatively. We don't have departments that are looking to overspend. We do have instances, as is clear this year, where we do have some budgets that will be over, and we will be looking for transfers at town meeting, but generally speaking, we try to work within our means, and I think we ought to be applauded for that and not scolded for that.
Okay,
Well,
Mr., you have anything else, another topic?
Well,
Because I have you for almost 15 minutes here. We want to move on to see if
Basically,
anybody else.
My concern is, when Mr. Hull took over as manager, the deductible on our stop-loss insurance was $50,000. The other night, I believe you said the deductible on the stop-loss insurance is $175,000. Okay, so for those people at home who don't understand this, the town is self-insured for employee health benefits. And so the town does not collect a penny unless a claim now goes over $175,000. Not the entire year of an employee's health care, but if somebody breaks their arm, or another claim would be breaking their finger or something like that, 2 separate claims. Okay, it's not like you add up all the claims and it's 175,000, it's per claim. And so I've never seen an agenda item where you take a real close look at this deductible. It's almost like we're given a freebie to the insurance company that we're paying millions of dollars to. And it doesn't go for competitive bid because by law it doesn't have to, but maybe it should. And so my question is, Mr. Hull and Mr. Kara, would you put an agenda item, and would Mr. Hull be willing to take a close look at this so maybe we can save money and maybe for once actually collect some money from the insurance company?
Just to point this out, this issue that it gets raised every year, the town has had this deductible now for several years. It has not changed, but it's really the same. It's really the same premise as when you buy auto insurance. You can have a $500 deductible on your auto plan, and you're going to pay a lot more in premium. So could we have a $50,000 deductible on our health insurance? Absolutely, but we're going to pay much more in terms of premiums. So this idea that we can have it both ways and reduce our deductible and save money just doesn't work. If you look at your own auto plan, if you have a $1,000 deductible, your premium drops. If you have a $500 deductible, your premium increases. It's all about risk. And we believe, and we have folks working on this that we hire, believe that our deductible is in the appropriate range. Some years we have 3 or 4 claims that exceed the 175, which was the case a couple of years ago. This current year, I believe we've got 9 claims that exceed 175,000. So we're making out, so to speak, but it all depends from year to year, and I believe that we are, the deductible is reasonable.
Thank you, Mr.
Mr.
McDonald. I think I've
I
given you
appreciate
enough
it. I
time,
just wanna
almost
thank
20
you very-
minutes now, so
Just wanted to thank
I-
you very much, but would you
Yep.
put an agenda item on?
we'll consider that. Thank you very much,
Thank you very
yes.
much.
Is there someone else that wishes to speak under public comments? Okay. Thank you. Announcements to my colleagues? Yes.
Sure, I think this is an appropriate time to give a shout out, if I could, to a lifelong resident here in town who, no stranger to anybody. You probably see him around in his truck, and he's a U.S. Navy vet from Vietnam, and I know him and his wife are watching at home, so want to give a shout out to a lifelong Wilmington resident and veteran. Thank him for his service, Mr. Richard Bertrand. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes,
New
announcements?
business?
Announcements first.
No announcements?
Okay. I have an announcement, and myself, Judy O'Connell, who is the chairperson of the Untile Recreational Facility, and Jeff Hull, the town manager, attended an event the other night in Cambridge on behalf of the town of Wilmington because we received the 2019 Silver Award, which is a prestigious award given out for the design and engineering of the Entile project, and sort of like the Academy Awards, it was quite amazing to be there. It's the American Council of Engineering Companies of Massachusetts presents the 2019 Silver Award to the town of Wilmington, Massachusetts, honoring outstanding professional design and excellence for Yentile Farm Recreational Facility by Green International, presented on March 20th, 2019. It was a spectacular night, especially for the town of Wilmington, and kudos to all the people that worked and volunteered for many years, from the residents that volunteered to the town officials for what they did to make that Yentile Farm open space for the residents to enjoy. They showed some pictures of it before and after, and it was quite an outstanding evening. Okay, on to new business. All set? Mr. McCoy?
Oh, yeah, just want to congratulate Mr. O'Connell, you, Mr. Chairman, and the Yentile Committee. You did an outstanding job, and, congratulations, definitely in order. I just want to touch something base with the town manager. I know Suzanne Sullivan brought something up, but relative to constituent service, Gennaro Grasso called me about a week ago of that very same concern about, he said, Mike, I think a lot of trucks are going to be parking behind Jimmy's garage when this project takes off. So I called the manager, and if we can be free to say, and I give credit to the manager, we had a nice discussion, and you said to me that there would be no trucks on any roadway, especially, what is that, Old Main Street, that street that's behind Jimmy's garage, right on, yeah.
Yes, I've spoken with the building inspector, indicated to him that trucks should not be allowed to park on Old Main Street, construction vehicles that are there for the purpose of being involved in that excavation project. He has been directed to go down there on a regular basis and check on that. With respect to the direction that vehicles take when they leave the site, I don't believe that the town has any legal authority to bar construction vehicles from that site or any other site in Woburn heading north on Main Street to Eames Street, and however they may go. But certainly with respect to Old Main Street, we are not going to allow trucks to be parked on Old Main Street.
I just hope you didn't mind sharing that, because you did say that you would do that. That's great. I think that's good news. I don't know if you were aware of it, but we did talk about that, and the building inspector will tag those trucks if they are parked on the town roads.
Well, yeah, I mean, the building inspector, obviously, again, it becomes an issue of being able to
Right.
be down there on some kind of a periodic basis, recognizing that he's got other responsibilities as do the other departments.
All right, and just one point. I just want to make it crystal clear, relative to communications under the third section, memorandum from town manager, selectmen's meeting agenda. I just want to make it crystal clear that I didn't single out any individual. I did call the town manager and ask for the town manager that all board members of the Board of Appeals to see if there's any disclosures on anything. And the only one that came up was Jackie Santini. I'm satisfied with that, but it was for everybody. I want to make that crystal clear to everyone. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Just probably should have said it under announcements, but under new business, Chief, once again, happy retirement, and congratulations, Chief Desmond, and best wishes on your journey as the head of the department. Okay, on to important dates.
First item under important dates is brush drop-off, Old Main Street, 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. April 6th, brush drop-off, Old Main Street, 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. April 6th, rabies clinic, Public Buildings Department, noon to 2. April 8th, last day to register to vote at the annual town elections and town meeting. Town clerk's office is open from 8:30 a.m. to 8 p.m. April 8th is the next Board of Selectmen's meeting, room 9, 7 p.m. April 10th, brush drop-off, Old Main Street, 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. April 10th, Wetland Resource Area and Conservation Land Library Lecture, Memorial Library, 7 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. April 13th, brush drop-off, Old Main Street, 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. April 15th, town offices closed for Patriots' Day. April 16th, a town forest nature walk, 3 p.m. April 17th, brush drop-off, Old Main Street, 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. April 20th, brush drop-off, Old Main Street, 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. April 20th, Little League Opening Day Parade. The kickoff on that is 9:30. April 20th, the Easter Egg Scramble, Town Common. It was originally scheduled for 11. It's being rescheduled for 2 o'clock, 2 p.m. on that date, April 20th. April 22nd, Board of Selectmen's meeting, room 9, 7 p.m. April 24th, brush drop-off, Old Main Street, 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. April 27th, annual town elections, polls open at 8 a.m., close at 8 p.m. April 27th, Spring Town Cleanup Day, 8:30 a.m. April 27th, brush drop-off, Old Main Street, 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. April 27th is a drug take-back program, Public Safety Building, 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. April 27th is a Land Stewardship Program Introduction Workshop, 1 p.m. May 4th, Annual Town Meeting, High School Auditorium, 10:30 a.m. And just a reminder that the plastic bag ban takes effect on May 5th.
Thank you. I would entertain a motion to enter into executive session for the purpose of discussing strategies with respect to collective bargaining with the New England Police Benevolent Association, Local 1, in accordance with the Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 30A, Section 21A, subsection 3, because as chairman, I declare that this discussion would be subject to detrimental effect if held under open session. And upon completion of the executive session, the board will vote to adjourn the meeting. Do I have a motion?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Motion by Mr. McCoy, second by Mr. Bendel. Any discussion? All in favor? And that's unanimous. And,
Greg Bendel, aye.
roll call, yeah.
Yes.
Mr. McCoy and Mr. Kyrie, yes.
Okay.
And that's it. Thank you all very much, and good night.